Hey friends, today we are going to take a rose garden tour. Yes, the roses are in bloom here in North Carolina and they are beautiful, and so we want to share them with you. We really have two gardens that contain most of our, if not all of our roses. Here at the house, I have a beautiful selection of David Austin roses that we're going to tour, and then we're going to pop on over to the nursery in the display gardens because I have a whole rose garden filled with roses from proven winners. So I'm going to show you just some of the different ones that we have that we are growing in our gardens, and I'm going to share some really helpful tips on how to have healthy, beautiful roses that give you loads and loads of gorgeous, delicious flowers. Here we are, obviously on the walkway to the patio, and let me introduce you to the generous gardener. Yes, so this is obviously a climbing rose from David Austin. This is her third season. So 3 years ago, I planted two bare root generous gardener climbing roses, and they have grown together quite well, and she is in full bloom. I chose the generous gardener because of her color and her fragrance. Here on the patio, I try to keep things more of a light color, so she is a very, very soft pastel pink. She starts more pink, and then as it ages, it'll turn almost like a creamy white, but it has the delicious old rose fragrance to it, and I just love it. Now, this is a very vigorous climber, as you can see. Two of them really filled in this space, I mean, amazingly well in just 3 years. This is on irrigation. So all of the roses here at the house are on irrigation. The ones at the nursery are not. So that kind of gives you an idea, once we see both of them, that roses really are very hardy. I will reference all the videos that we have done on the care of the different roses, but you saw me prune this back in January, February, because that is one major key when you have roses. No matter where they're from, who bred them, there's just a few exceptions with some like old heirloom roses. Pruning is vital because roses bloom on new growth. You want to prune your roses. If you remember and you look back, I'll try to throw up a picture of what this looked like after I pruned it. I mean, it was bare, it was naked, because you take off all the leaves, so there was not one leaf on this rose. And look at her, gorgeous. This does get full sun. We're out here early in the morning and she gets sun up to sundown, and it's just, she's magnificent. I just have to say, I do adore having her here. We do have to, this drives Jerry crazy, because when you come in, of course she's a really vigorous grower, so I am having to kind of constantly come in and pull up and tack up some of these limbs that are just full of flowers. So let's move on over here, because when you then come through the arch, we have in this flower bed 3 groups of different David Austins. Now, in each of these masses, there are 3 of the same plant. I get all my information for the David Austin roses from the David Austin website. I mean, they are the breeder, they are the expert in their roses, so I'm gonna do what they say. So when you want to have a mass planting, so it looks like one huge plant, you can plant 3 or more very closely together. I followed all the instructions on the David Austin website as far as spacing. I will reference that video back for you. So here we have the 3 different roses. This is going into their 2nd season. I do order all of my David Austins directly from David Austin's website, and I get them as bare root roses. Now, if you go to David Austin's website right now, a lot of stuff is going to say sold out. That's because it's just the timing of the year. They have just liquidated all of their inventory and sent it out to folks. The best time to order the David Austins is in late summer, fall, and then they will ship them to you in the spring. This is Roald Dahl. So, you know, the famous author of James and the Giant Peach. So this beautiful rose is just about to start. We have a couple of blooms that have gone ahead and opened up. And they are, of course, because of James and the Giant Peach, they are a beautiful, soft, peachy apricot color. And again, a delicious old rose fragrance to them. Beautiful, delicious rose, very happy and vigorous. One of these roses, though, the plant is a 3-year-old plant because I had it originally on the patio and then I moved it and added 2 more to it. So gorgeous is right here. Now, roses, like any other flower, will bloom at different times. Here we have Susan Williams Ellis. And Susan Williams Ellis is a beautiful, pure white double flower, really just a nice, soft, pure white. Personally, there's not a whole lot of fragrance on this one for me. I don't know if it's just the rose or if it's me, but there's not a lot of fragrance, but that's okay because it is beautiful. She was a pretty early bloomer. You can see that I have quite a few old blooms that were on here. She was the earliest one out of these 3, but Susan Williams Ellis, gorgeous rose, and she does have some thorns. Different roses, again, will have the different levels of thorn. Rual doesn't have very many thorns at all. Susan, she's a thorny girl, I'm not gonna lie, but really nice. Again, we have the 3 clumps in here and stunning. Moving on down, we have the Poet's Wife. The Poet's Wife is a beautiful, nice, soft yellow. Again, this one's a little bit of a later bloomer compared to some of those early blooms, and I would say it's a mid bloom, so you have an early, mid, and late bloomers. Nice, soft yellow, again, delicious fragrance to it. 3 different plants in here growing together as one, because that's the whole idea, is to have these big, beautiful roses back here. Then we step down, we have azaleas, we have the tea olives. I love how it complements the Japanese, this is a Fire Glow Japanese maple. I love all the contrast because you have the new growth that has kind of those red hues to it, and then you've got the Japanese maple. Of course, the fountain. Fountain here is doing great, as are the annuals that we planted a couple weeks ago. So moving on over here to the actual patio area, this is where, this was, other than the Generous Gardener, this was the only place I was gonna have roses because I wanted to have the roses here on the patio and on that arch. And then these did so incredibly well that I added the other ones in the garden last year. Some of these are of different ages. So this is Brother Codful, and Brother Codful, you can see, is not blooming yet. He does have some buds on it, but this is gonna be a later bloomer. So depending on how you want your rose garden to be, do you want them to flush out all at the same time? Do you want to have more continuous blooms where you run through a cycle of different plants? It just really is a personal preference. But Brother Codful is going to be a nice soft pink. All of the ones here on this wall are in that pink shade family, and this is a 3-year-old plant, but it did get moved because I had to rearrange some plants last year. So 3-year-old plant, but it got moved. Now, coming over here, this is Gertrude Jekyll. And Gertrude Jekyll has been the star of the garden so far this spring. She's kind of on her way out of her blooms. She was absolutely the very first one to start blooming. But you want to talk about the most gorgeous, delicious, fragrance, beautiful color, massive. It was like this plant just absolutely glowed when she was in full bloom. Stunning. This will be her 2nd year. I planted her last year as that bare root, but I've been so impressed with her this year because her stems, like look, this stem is full of buds, but look how nice and straight it is. It is not floppy. The flowers are nice and upright, really strong, sturdy stems. Part of that is just the genetics of the plant, but also part of that is because I prune them every winter. So you've got to bring back your roses and prune them and eliminate any weak stems. So Gertrude Jekyll is doing just fine. And then we come over here to Scepter d'Isle. Scepter d'Isle, I think, might be one of my favorite flowers. Like the actual look of the flower is stunning. And you can tell that this is a very vigorous, very happy, very high producing plant. She is 3 years old and she has been in her spot for all of the 3 of those years. Not really my favorite fragrance. It has more of a myrrh fragrance to it, but I don't care because it is stunning and gorgeous. Now, this one tends to be very vigorous, right? So you can see a lot of that upright growth on it. Last year when I installed these trellises that got these from Gardener's Supply, you can just order them online. My thought is that I would kind of train the roses onto the arch and let them grow up. This happened naturally, like the plant just kind of went back and tucked itself in there. I love that. The clematis is growing quite nicely in here, but she does have a problem sometimes of leaning too much far forward. When she finishes blooming, I'm going to come in here and prune this back. Not a severe prune, but definitely keep it more tight overall, and then that'll help, of course, reflush and lots of blooms later on. But Scepter d'Isle, gorgeous, pure pink, baby doll pink, stunning, absolutely gorgeous. Love, love, love that rose. And then we have 2 more that are creeping into the shade, sun rather. So this area, all the roses here on the patio area get full sun. Again, like I said, it's 8:15 in the morning and the sun is creeping around, and then it stays here until, gosh, well, in the summertime till like 7 o'clock at night. So definitely full sun, and these are on irrigation. Now, here we have, we have 2 here. One is blooming and one is not. This is Desdemona. Desdemona she is a 3-year-old plant, but she got moved last year. And I'm telling you, the ones that got moved, because no matter how hard you try, you're still going to cut roots, and that does delay growth and kind of stunt the growth just a little bit. But Desdemona has, again, nice, soft, creamy, white pink flowers on it with a delicious fragrance. Very vigorous. Like, she has loads of blooms on her. You can see that it is coming kind of into the Rose of Sharon tree here. This is a blue chiffon. So when they're all blooming at the same time, you've got pinks and then you have blue. Gorgeous. But Desdemona is one of my absolute favorites because of the bloom and the fragrance. And then over here we have Emily Bronte. Emily Bronte, she's an overachiever, and you can see very, very vigorous. I will have to, again, just like Scepter d'Isle, when she finishes blooming, I will clean her up and keep her more out of the way of the Rose of Sharon. That's the beautiful thing about roses, is that they bloom on new growth. So you can really feel free to prune if they get out of control or out of their growing zone. But nice height on it. She is a later bloomer. We do have beautiful clusters of lots of buds, but nice soft pink. And of course, I had to get Emily Bronte because our oldest daughter's name is Emily. So this is Emily's rose for sure. And then there's one more that I want to show you that I kind of actually forgot about until I said Emily's rose, because we have, you see I'm just walking directly off the patio here. We have this rose tree. And so this is the Julia Child rose. It's not a David Austin. I forget who bred her, but it is obviously a standard. So it is a rose tree. My Emily wanted to rescue this plant because we had them at the nursery, and this was the last one that didn't get sold. It was awful looking, y'all. It was scraggly, like half the plant was dead. It just looked rough. And so last year Emily said, Mama, I really want us to try to save this. So I said, okay. So brought it over, planted it. Clearly she's doing just fine. But it is the Julia Rose, and you know, Julia Childs is the famous chef, and Julia did enjoy her use of butter. So this is a beautiful, like, rich, like this is the Irish butter, really rich yellow, and a lovely fragrance to it. Doing just fine. If you were seeing a video a couple of weeks ago, I talked about how it was, or last week rather, how this one was leaning and we needed to stake it. Jerry came in and we just did something really simple. So we have rebar that we use sometimes to stake trees at the nursery so they don't tip over. So he just brought in a piece of rebar and he hammered it down in to the ground right beside of Julia Child. we tied it with a little twine, and she is holding up nice and straight and doing great. So this is another gorgeous specimen of a rose. Now, with your roses, you really do have to decide, and that was for me. I didn't I thought roses were going to be too fussy and too high maintenance to grow, and I just thought not something I want for my garden. But then with all the hype with the David Austin's, I said, you know, I'm going to give it a try. And when you get that first rose, it is just, for me, highly addictive because they are so incredibly beautiful and they're not as hard to take care of as you think. So what we're going to do is we're going to move over to the rose garden at the nursery. We're going to show you those, and then I'm going to tell you and just explain how easy roses really are to take care of. All right, so here we are at the nursery in the display gardens, and here we have the rose garden filled with the roses from Proven Winners. As I talk through these, if there's anything that you want to know more information about, like specifics, just greater detail, head to provenwinners.com. Simply type in the name of the rose and it'll pop up and it'll give you more information than you can possibly imagine. The folks at Proven Winners were very kind and very generous last year to send us these roses because I had conveyed to them that I really wanted to create a rose garden here at the nursery so that our customers and viewers could see these gorgeous flowers. These, a lot of these new roses, especially the tall ones, were introduced last year. So some of these are relatively new to the market. Then some of the more the landscape, the smaller shrub, like small ones, have been on the market for a while. So we're just going to go through and I'm going to share them with you. Now you'll notice that I have throughout the garden, there are 3 obelisks in here. So there's 2 on each end and then there is 1 in the middle. Those obelisks and that grouping around those are the Rise Up series of roses. These are what they call mini climbers. So if you wanted to, like if you have a small area, if you have a small obelisk or you have a small trellis, this would be perfect to use as a climbing rose. Now, roses, when we say climbing roses, it's not like a clematis where it wraps around something. You actually have to kind of attach it to the structure. So these are mini climbers. They're going to reach, and I believe, in that 5 to 6 foot range. And so you can see we've got those 3 down. Now, what I did is, because you can use it as a climber or you can just use it as a taller shrub. So for example, this is the Rise Up Amberness, and Rise Up Amberness is, I have the 1 in the obelisk, right, and then I have 2 beside of it that are not. They're not supported in any way or any fashion, and they are very nice and upright and beautiful. Now, Amberness is, and I'm probably going to say this so many times, is one of my favorite flowers because it is just a beautiful, rich, amber, almost like a cantaloupe color to it, and it has a delicious fragrance because the folks at Proven Winners really were trying, if you're gonna have a rose that's a beautiful rose, it's gotta have fragrance, right? I mean, what if I'm gonna have these babies in my garden, I want them to smell good. I came over here yesterday afternoon to do something, oh my gosh, and I just got this like waft of delicious fragrance. It is the roses. So they come, of course, in different stages as far as like their blooms. Have a beautiful cluster right here of Amberness. These definitely, if you can have your roses in full sun, that is the absolute best way to do it because they just need all of that energy to produce these gorgeous flowers. So we're going to kind of work our way around this way. Now, here we go. We have got, and I have all of my signs. Here we have the Ringo Double Up Pink. This is going to be more of a shorter rose. I still have it in a group of 3, not quite as a double bloom as like the Rise Up Amberness, but a beautiful, gorgeous pink to it. Nice soft pink on the outside, and then on the inside it has that nice hot pink center. So, and you will see that they kind of change the colors as the flowers age. You will get the new ones that are a nice deeper pink, and then your older ones will have more of a white effect to it. So on the same plant, you have a little bit of that kind of that ombre effect with them. Now, here we have the Reminiscent series. The Reminiscent series is, while they're going to be nice and tall and vigorous, they're not going to be as tall as your Rise Ups. So this is Reminiscent Coral, and Reminiscent Coral, I mean, y'all, look at that. Huge, massive flowers on them. And you can see really all the stages right there. We've got buds, we've got a new one, and we have an older one. Huge flowers on them, and just an absolutely stunning color. Nice, healthy, vigorous plants on them. You can see they've got some height to them. Again, there are 3 in here because Proven Winners sent us 3, and so I planted them in groups of 3. Down in the middle, this one is a showstopper. This is the Rise Up Lilac Days, and Rise Up Lilac Days is just a beautiful, nice, soft lavender color, right? A lavender lilac color. Really impressed with how these guys, I mean, yes, you have this one in the obelisk, and so you think, well, the obelisk is holding it up. No, not really. I mean, like, look at this. This is not supported at all. Really upright flowers, stems on them, holding those blooms nice and tight and high. The flowers are not as large as the Reminiscents, but that's okay because they're absolutely covered and they have tons of buds on them. So the Lilac Days, it just depends on like your color palette, right? So I personally just love having all the colors in a rose garden. I think they're beautiful. Then we have Reminiscent Pink. Reminiscent Pink is going to be that classic, nice, soft baby doll pink. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit later because she just has her first few buds on her, but very classic, soft pink to it. The Reminiscent Pink, you can see, because I pruned them all the same, she's not quite as tall and as upright with her habit on it, but it's all depending on what you're looking for in your rose garden. Here we go, another Rise Up. This is Rise Up Ringo, and Jenny just walked through a spider web, so that's always fun. What do they say, like the first person in the garden in the morning gets all the spider webs? But Rise Up Ringo, like look how beautiful that flower is. Yellow always makes a statement from a distance. So if you're gonna have roses maybe in the back of your garden, not really up close, and you want it to pop, you cannot go wrong with this rose. It is stunning and gorgeous. Really nice, rich yellow to it. And then it has that nice center with that little bit of red in it. When you're across the nursery, the first one you're really gonna see is this Rise Up Ringo because of that nice, bright, cheery yellow flower on it. Gorgeous, absolutely stunning. Then we're gonna flip around this way. I'm gonna have Jerry flip around. We're gonna do a little bit of a dance here. This is this is Oh So Easy Urban Legend. So Urban Legend has been on the market for several years now. It's not a new rose at all, but this is gonna be, that Oh So Easy is more of a lower growing, it's not going to be nearly as tall as your, like say, your Rise Ups or your Reminiscents. Continuous bloomer. Really nice, true red flowers on them, and it's just going to keep blooming and blooming. Now, with the Urban Legend, we have found that sometimes they'll send up these guys that are a little bit taller. You can come in and easily get that and just trim it back. So if you want them to keep them lower, like I was talking about at the house, very easy to keep your roses in a certain size because they bloom on new growth. So even after they have come out and they're flowering and you need to trim it back some, you absolutely can do that. So you can just come in and take those top pieces off. We're still on the Reminiscent Pink here. Then we have back to the Rise Up Lilac, and then we have At Last. And At Last has been on the market for several years now. This was kind of their first, I'm gonna have to dance over here so that Jerry can get these gorgeous flowers. But the At Last rose was really one of their very first roses that kind of touted that it was going to be that, you know, beautiful classic rose with a gorgeous fragrance. And it does. Like, it has just a magnificent classic old rose fragrance to it. Love that. And of course I can't help but every time I I say at last, I hear Etta James singing in my head. So fun. Now, the other reminiscent, so there are 3 rise ups and there are 3 reminiscent. This is reminiscent crema. Look at this flower. So Jerry and I were at Spring Meadow Nursery, that's the home of the Proven Winners Color Choice Shrubs, and they we were walking through on a tour, and I glanced down and I saw this rose growing, and I knew that they did not have a rose that looked like this. And so came to find out they were introducing this reminiscent series and crema. It is a beautiful buttermilk, kind of a creamy white flower to it. Again, huge, massive, classic flower of a rose on this. You see it's going up. We have had a lot of rain, so when these were in bloom, of course, because they are so massive, the rain got in and it pulled some of them down. Easy solution. You know what you do? You bring out your little snips and you snip the ones that are laying down and you put them in a vase and you bring them in the house and you enjoy them. But the reminiscent crema, if you're looking for that really kind of that classic creamy white, you cannot go wrong with that one. And then this is another oh so easy. This is lemon zest. Again, has been on the market for several years now. But again, that beautiful, nice, soft yellow. If you're looking for that yellow rose, very low maintenance. The oh so easies are going to have smaller blooms than the reminiscent series, right? Because reminiscent is really going for that classic rose, where these guys are going to be more of that nice continuous bloomer that are going to be nice and low. So lemon zest is just a beautiful, pure yellow flower, nice little fragrance to it, gorgeous. But for me, I love having a rose garden filled with all of this color. Yes, at the house, I was trying to stay in that palette of like the cool colors, just because that's the patio and that's that kind of garden. Here, I'm just like, give me all the colors, give me all the flowers. And it's beautiful. And this is a display garden, right? We have designed this so that folks, when they come to the nursery, and they're interested in a different rose, they can see, okay, well, this is what it's going to look like in year 2, because I planted these as 1-gallon plants, right? So last spring, it was probably like around this time that I planted them. They were 1-gallon shrubs, and this is the 2nd year growth on them, not on irrigation. The first year we had them in here, last year we really kind of had to monitor them, make sure they had enough water, but now we're not irrigating them at all. Now, if it comes to like July and August and it's super hot, then absolutely we will have to supplement them. All right, so how do you take care of roses? Because there are historically some problems with roses. How do we take care of them? First, prune them. They must be pruned. Like we talked about earlier, roses bloom on new growth. There are a few exceptions of old heirloom roses. The vast majority of roses on the market today need to be pruned. I will reference, you can go back and look at my videos on how I pruned mine, because I showed you how I pruned these this year, or you can visit David Alston's website on how to prune, because they give great tutorials exactly on how to prune. So number 1, prune your roses. 2, you need to feed them, right? So when you have a plant that produces tons of flowers, you've got to feed them. Food equals flowers. There's multiple ways that you could do that. You could use rose tone. That is a nice slow release fertilizer. You would just follow the instructions on the rose tone bag as how to feed those plants. You can also use, what I have always done historically is use the Bayer. It's the 3-in-1 rose and flower care. So, because people ask me all the time, what do I use? So I have used that for the past 3 years. Now, this product, you can either get it as a granular or you can get it as a liquid and you spray it. Personally, I like the granular because I don't have to mix something up. I don't have to worry about what time of day I do it, because are there pollinators out there? So it's just a granular and you put it around the base of the plant. That product has your fertilizer in it, so you fertilize your plants with that. It has a fungicide, because roses historically have troubles with black spot and powdery mildew, especially in a hot, humid environment like North Carolina. So it has that fungicide in it, and then it has a systemic, because again, here in the South, we have problems with Japanese beetles. It used to be more just of a southern thing, but unfortunately they are spreading across the country, so more people are having to deal with Japanese beetles. There's not any natural predators of Japanese beetles. There's not really an organic spray that you can use for Japanese beetles. Really, the only organic method is to sit out here and literally pick them off your plant. When you have large gardens or you have vast number of plants that they're attracted to, that's just not feasible. So this Bare 3-in-1 will take care of Japanese beetles, it takes care of aphids, and it takes care of any kind of caterpillars that chew on the plant. The number one question with that is people always ask, you know, does it affect the pollinators? We have never had an issue. We have never seen a decline in our pollinator population. We have a very vigorous pollinator population here, so we have never had that problem. So you want to feed them and then of course treat them for if you have the Japanese beetles. That is the number one thing, and so the Bare 3-in-1 is a great option for that. Another option that's really good to treat the Japanese beetles and the aphids is the Fertilome Tree and Shrub Drench. So this is a liquid that you mix up with 1 gallon of water. So based on how big your plant is, right? So if it's really small, you just use a little bit. If it's bigger, and then there are directions on the container. But this tree and shrub drench lasts for 12 months. And so you apply it once a year, you mix it with 1 gallon of water, and you pour it around the base of the plant. You want to do this a couple of days before it rains because you want the plant to soak up all of that, and that will keep all the Japanese beetles, aphids, caterpillars from chewing on your roses. The Bare 3-in-1, I have to apply that monthly. So that just kind of gives you an idea. There's pros and cons to both, but that is what I have used, and that is how we have gotten these big, huge, beautiful roses, is by pruning, feeding, and then of course preventing critters from chewing on them. But with roses, because they bloom on new growth, the more you cut on them, like you come in here and this is a gorgeous clump, right, of roses. I can come in here and trim that, pop that in a vase. You're kind of controlling the size of the rose, but you're pruning it, but you're getting a great reward for it. The only other thing I would say is with the roses is after they had their big spring flush, give them a little haircut, because you're going to want to get rid of these guys right here. So these are the old blooms, right? So you can see these are done. What's going to happen is once all the flowers fall off, we've heard of like rose hips, right? So what's going to happen with this little guy right here is going to form a rose hip, which looks kind of like a bulb almost. We want to take the plant, take that off, so the plant's not putting energy into producing the rose hip. We want it to produce more flowers. So that's why after your spring flush, if you can come in here and give it a little trim, takes off all of the old blooms that are going to turn into rose hips, and you get new flowers. Now in the fall we leave those alone because depending on the rose, plant by plant, these rose hips will get nice and big and beautiful, like red or orange, and they're gorgeous fall interest, winter interest. So we want to leave those. So that is basically the rose garden, the David Austin's at the house, and then of course these gorgeous Proven Winter ones here at the nursery. If you want to know more information about either types of these roses, visit David Austin's website and Proven Winter's website. I will have some of our videos linked in the video description, so you can check those out if you want to see exactly how I pruned all of these roses. I have those linked for you. As always, we hope you have found this fun, informational, and inspiring. Y'all have a great day. Thanks so much for gardening with Creekside. We'll see you in the next video. Bye, friends.